Welcome to the 4th annual Nlight panel, customer panel, here at the Gartner Infrastructure and Operations event. Today is about the panel. This is not a sales pitch. It's not meant to be. We always want to put our customers first because they are the most informative, most knowledgeable folks on understanding how to deal with infrastructure and operations, so we usually put them first. But I'm going to give a quick 2-slide introduction into who Nlight software is for those of you that might not be familiar. So Nlight software has been in business for 14 years, and we've been focused on helping companies with their infrastructure. We established the market known as data center infrastructure management. You probably know it as DCIM. In the last Magic Quadrant from Gartner, we were furthest up and to the right. And what we do is we help companies manage their infrastructure. So the question I ask you is, why are we here? Why are we here? And I don't mean that why are we on planet Earth, but why are we at this Gartner Infrastructure and Operations event? And I'm assuming not many people have data centers and co-location facilities because they enjoy it. Fundamentally, the purpose of everyone at this event, every single vendor, is to support workloads and applications. That's really what infrastructure and operations is about. And so for 14 years, we've been helping companies really manage their critical infrastructure. And as a result, we have over 350 customers worldwide who use us. And we're fortunate today, we have representatives from 5 of our customers who are going to talk about how they deal with managing infrastructure. And that is the focus today. But it's not just good enough to do DCIM today. DCIM isn't just good enough. It's a foundation. It's beginning to be that to really do infrastructure management, you've got to understand the workloads. You've got to understand the applications that are running on that infrastructure to make that infrastructure perform better, to be more reliable, more secure, and to operate it at the lowest possible cost. And so when I talk about this, as I said, we have over 350 customers. As a result of focusing on the value we provide, our customer retention is 98%, which we're very proud of. We're fortunate again today to have 5 of our customers talking on how they deal with infrastructure. But often when I talk about what I do at a cocktail party or even when I'm talking at a Gartner event, people don't quite get the gist of what I mean by infrastructure management or workload asset management. So a picture's worth 1,000 words. There's 12,000 words up here. It isn't a comprehensive list of everything we do, but it'll give you an idea of the types of things that Nlight does. We help manage all the processes from doc to decom throughout the entire life cycle of assets that support workloads. We help you manage those processes to capture information, to normalize that information, to integrate that information into other systems, whether you're integrating into a BMS system, you're integrating into an ITSM system, you might be integrating into virtualization or containers to understand the workloads that are running on your infrastructure. So it isn't an island unto itself. These systems, like Nlight, are there to provide information and be used by people outside of the data center, outside the co-location facilities. But as I said, this is not a sales pitch. This is about the panel. And so if you're interested in hearing more about what Nlight can do, please drop by the panel. A bunch of friendly people at Nlight can talk to you about what we do. I promise I won't tell any more bad jokes if you come over there. But at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our panel. So as I mentioned a couple times, we're fortunate today to have 5 representatives from 5 different customers of Nlight. And so it's all about their knowledge. If you have any questions, we're going to leave some time at the end. So feel free at the end to ask any questions you have of the panelists. So keep them in mind. We love to get questions because it kind of catches us off guard, and you never know what's going to happen. So what I'd like is each of the panelists to first introduce yourself, what role you have at your organization, kind of a general lay of the land of your infrastructure. So can we start with you, John, at the end with IBM?
Is this working?
Yeah, go for it, John.
My name is John Miller. I'm with IBM in the Global Technology Services line of business. I'm the chief architect for our worldwide deployment of data center infrastructure management tools. predominantly Nlight, but we bring an interesting new angle to that in that we actually were trading off from a previous tool that did some, but we had 24 different tools. And so part of our job is what we call a legacy migration to bridge that into Nlight. So we'll have not 24, but maybe eventually one. But at the same time, it brings a lot of new opportunities that we bring to Nlight, but at the same time, it's going to help us with the end-to-end scope of DSIM. So my job is the strategy and architecture, deployment, operations, and we have a small COC team that we use to deploy that across our enterprise, which we'll probably get into the sizes and stuff later. So.
Can you state how many data centers?
Yeah, I can say, yeah, right now we're rolling it out, like I said, worldwide. So North America kind of took the lead on that, where we have about 2 million square feet of data center space and in the neighborhood of 280,000 assets that we're running there. And for the rest of the world, it usually go 2 times 5 and 2.5 times that, and that's what it'll equate to. So, and it's the whole scope of the portfolio, everything from the asset inventory, connectivity for power, network, and workflow, and now getting into some of the things Mark talked about with integrations with some of the ITSM. So I see that's the biggest thing we're doing now that's different, is kind of bridging into more than just the traditional facilities-based side, which we started with, but we had an architecture and a plan all along to get it to that ITSM side. As with a large company, pros and cons of that, one is, in terms of the cons, is we go a little slower, I think, in terms of the breadth of that. I think once we focus on a certain area, like inventory, then we knock that out, we go to the next thing, and, sort of chip away at this thing. But I know some of the other panel members, just from speaking with them, have kind of gone very fast in some of the other areas in terms of network and workloads and things like that, which obviously is on our roadmap still.
Okay, great. Hal?
My name is Hal Nyseth from CBRE. I am a facilities manager for the engineering operations area as a managed service provider for a couple of organizations. And our landscape overall, to follow up with John's landscape, we have roughly 13 strategic data centers worldwide that are managed, roughly 12,000 racks and hundreds of thousands of assets that we manage. Primary use of Nlight today is in the DSIM side with the NAIL component, and we use that as our definitive trusted source for asset control, move, add, change monitoring, and we also do that with an integration into ServiceNow for API management. The changes are done within ServiceNow, replicated over to Nlight, and then back to ServiceNow for verification and validation. We are also working in the NEO space as well to use NEO within currently running a POC on that to identify how to utilize the EPMS, BMS controls monitoring aspect to minimize some of the vendor-provided costs and make some infrastructure efficiencies to eliminate points of failure on the network.
Great. Angie, could you introduce yourself as well as Cerner?
Absolutely. I'm Angie Peffinger, and I'm a portfolio area leader for Cerner. We're a healthcare IT company. We have managed services. We do a lot of remote hosting for many of the hospitals, not just in the U.S., but across the globe. We have the same problems that all of y'all have inside your infrastructure. And as a portfolio area leader, I actually own all of our tech refresh and our tech currency. So I cause a lot of problems inside the data center with disparate space and constant upgrades. So I literally found Nlight and DSIM by Googling. Well, like, we can't be the only company that has these problems, and DSIM kept coming up in the searches. So as part of that, Cerner absolutely empowers their associates to take initiative. And I was able to talk a lot with Enlight, and we have been able to, currently we're projecting to defer 2 data center builds, which is huge for our company, for our shareholders. And we're doing that with Enlight, and it's been a great partnership. We started with the 10 data centers that are in the Kansas City area where our headquarters are. And then I'm certain we'll implement it globally once we get that all stood up and worked out.
Okay, thanks, Sanjeev. Pete?
Can I steal that from you? Thanks. Hi, I'm Pete Lazzarato. With Charter Communications, so we're the second largest MSO. I would imagine most of you guys and women that are in this room use the famous Excel spreadsheet for asset tracking. If you don't, that's exactly how I started out. So my job with Charter was to implement DCIM, which started about 2 years ago. To give you a quick recap, I vetted about 6 different companies, spent a ton of time, did a really nice, awesome, I think, PowerPoint presentation to highlight some of the things about each company. So, I'm not on Enlight's payroll, but I was happy to come up here and talk to you guys about how awesome it's been working with Enlight. We have currently purchased 4 modules. One of them, Hal mentioned, which is NEO, which is the actual real-time power management for your data center or lab, what have you. So I manage the lab using the software, and it's partially an asset tracking, but in power monitoring tool. So, and it's already shown a couple of the reports, a slide back, it showed you some of the reports that can be pulled up. I pull these reports up and I show my GVP, hey, this is what we're looking at. So it's not a pie in the sky number, it's a real actual diagram that I can put on a PowerPoint or that I could show him on my laptop. So it's been awesome to see that live.
Great.
Thank you.
Liam?
Hey, I'm Liam from Nutanix. So my job at Nutanix is I head up the platform engineering, infrastructure, and operations teams. We're basically the guys that run all the Nutanix blocks internally in the private cloud. It's a pretty large environment. Racks, I kind of feel bad about this because I kind of skimp you guys on the racks. Nutanix by its very nature is hyper dense. So, don't tell the sales guys. They might want to.
We promise not to listen.
Yeah, it's fine. That joke was horrible, by the way.
know.
I've just been sitting here for like 15, 20 minutes just going, dude, that was like the worst dad joke I think I've heard in weeks.
Well, I told you I'd start them low so you could pull them up, so that's good.
Cool. So, being that we have a hypervisor, we're a software company for the most part. One of our biggest challenges was, I think probably something that almost all of you have gone through at some point or another, and that's mapping the logical thing to the physical location, right? So a virtual machine or a container or something, right? Nobody ever calls us to say, block 23A 1401C is down. What are you going to do about that, Liam? I don't know. Nobody ever calls to say that. They call to say, oh, my Linux VM is down. They call to say, that Microsoft thing that I had running is down, right? So being able to map that, a physical outage to a logical, or map a logical outage to a physical place, or if you have servers go down, you can say, oh yeah, these are all the logical platforms or services that went down with that, right? Enlight is a tool that we brought in. We spent a lot of time customizing to get that level of visibility. So it serves for us as a single source of truth for everything in all of our colos and all of our data centers, right? So not just on-prem servers, server rooms, but also our large colos and throughout the United States and into Europe.
Okay, great. So not Enlight specific, like what are your organizations focusing on in respects to infrastructure through the rest of this year, but certainly into 2019, like what is sort of the imperatives for your organizations? What are you folks thinking about? Is it automation, cost reduction, public cloud, like all of the above? Like, would anybody like to take that, Pete?
I would say efficiency. That's pretty broad, but I would be shocked if I'm the only one that would say this, but if your desk or cubicle is used as a storage space for boxes or equipment, then you probably will need something like this. It helps to make your organization more efficient. So what I manage a colo, and I manage about 684 cabinets or racks, whatever you want to say. So my goal for 2019 is to make sure that we're more power efficient, especially in the colo. It's a big dollar amount that we spend every month. So if you have a colo and you're managing that, this can absolutely help to do that.
Anyone else want to talk about your initiatives?
I'll jump in. We have a little bit of a unique situation where we're looking at a hosting service to break up for one side, to minimize the overall footprint in our current data center, or one of our major data centers. We have roughly 13 strategic data centers worldwide that manage for the Nlight tool for the company that I work for. With that, the overall goal is also to minimize the number of assets at each location. They want to minimize the overall footprint of the strategic locations, and then they also want to be able to better manage the power to save money. As a representative for CBRE, it's all about facilities and infrastructure and efficiencies there as well. So we're looking to minimize the physicalness of the data centers, push more things to the cloud, and then we also want to take into consideration when we're trying to move this down strategically is many of these back-end partners that you might discover endpoints with on the NEO side for real-time power management and building facility systems. They often tag along a third-party vendor that you might need to interface with to put the presentation of the GUI and the data out there. Nlight does this wonderfully on a GUI interface, provides a lot of the options right out of the box. So we're trying to minimize the additional vendors, the third-party vendors that we need to have come in, do the work, and then have to contract with to be able to present that out. So companies that you might know of, heard of, SetPoint, Johnson Controls, just to name a couple, offer services, professional services to do that at a cost. Well, if you put in Nlight and NEO, you can take away some of that cost by doing that directly through their interface. So hopefully we can reduce contracts and increase the earnings there.
So Angie, what are the strategic initiatives?
You know, we're a business like any other company out there, right? TCO is a huge initiative. Being able to manage our assets, know what assets we have out there, clean up our CMDB. I don't know how many of you have a clean CMDB that you can trust that has a golden record. But and I know you said not Nlight specific, but in all fairness, Nlight and DSIM, this project has taken us down an awesome path as a huge organization. We have product standards committees where we went through and updated the product catalog. We've been able to get all of our network assets into our CMDB for the first time. There's just a lot of things that float around in infrastructure and in the data center, right? We're out there standardizing whether, you know, and defining what a deployed server means, or what a retired server means, and where they should be if they're tagged as such. So, I mean, just as an end-to-end cost and getting a company together as an organization and thinking along the same level and the same plane has been awesome.
Great. Anyone else Johnny, want to take it on?
Yeah, I want to pick up on what Angie said because with IBM, like I said, there were these pros and cons, and being a big company, it gets very segregated. So the biggest issue for us was not the technology so much as it was getting everyone on board with, through workflow and using that so that, first off, that you are sharing this one central system instead of having 3,000 accounts with 3,000 different sets of spreadsheets that they're working with. And then making sure that everyone's communicating, we've developed standards so it all makes sense when you put it together. So, and the thing is, then you're trying to take this up through management levels where every unit, has their own little fiefdom. Every site was, in fact, when I came into this area more than 10 years ago, we used to call it silos. That was the way they referred to their organizations, where they were so vertically aligned. So this is the kind of tool you need because it breaks down those walls, establishes common standards, and it's a win-win situation because now the guys who are out there with spreadsheets are saying, wow, you should have done this 20 years ago because now we have a platform to use it and it doesn't just disappear. You don't lose a spreadsheet. It doesn't get dated or someone doesn't pick up one that's last year's version, but it's accessible for all. So that's...
Okay. Oh, did you want?
Yeah, I got one for you. It's all right.
Hi. Sorry.
All right. No. So what we're working on in the for 2019 is we are really, really heavily invested in automation. And part of the reason for that is that like my job is basically to just have resources available for people to consume. And I think many of you are probably in the same boat, right? People count on you to have whether it's computer storage or whatever it is, ready and available at any given time. And so one of the things that I hate, and this is probably complete sacrilege to say it, but I hate doing tickets. My team hates doing tickets. Nobody likes doing tickets. It sucks. And so the only way to get around that is just to automate it. So, we have a variety of different tools that we use. Some are like no code or zero code. Workato is a good example of that, where it's basically an if this occurs, then do this, and you can talk between multiple applications. There's a connector for Nutanix, which is great because you can talk to your hypervisor, and it enabled us to get our workflows going through chat, through Slack. And so people don't file tickets with us anymore, which is fantastic because, like I said, I hate tickets. They just go into Slack and they say, hey, I want a VM. Does a little real language processing. Says, oh, you want a VM? Gives them a bunch of lists of stuff that we would normally ask them in a ServiceNow ticket. And they get their VM and they go happily about their business. We register. Most of my customers are all doing like Linux anyway, so they just want to SSH. So we do public key and we do swapping and all this other fancy stuff that we get to get done. But our focus this coming year is we're going to try and be a little bit more disruptive with how we're offering our services to my internal customers, right? Which is sort of Nutanix worldwide, whether it's sales guys or engineers or whoever. We've got a plethora of products at Nutanix. Like one is called AFS, or I'm sorry, it's not AFS now. It's Nutanix Files. And it's a storage server that basically will issue a mount point, just like your NetApps or EMCs would. Only it is way better because it's Nutanix. But I want to be able to not have to deal with those tickets as well. So for us this year, it's all about automating the workflows for our end customers. And then packaging these up and then presenting them back up either through the Community Edition, which is free, the Nutanix Community Edition, or getting integrations into Nlight, which we're working on the connector right now. That we just announced that at .next, but making sure that our tools for a single source of truth and our tools that our customers consume from, that our whole shop is just, it all can talk to each other and we can track it and go all the way up from the thing that dude requested all the way down to what's the power that's actually running that and what rack it's at. So that's what we're up to in 2019.
Okay, so one of the number one solution or the number one thing people are doing and why they tend not to go with a DSIM solution or to automate their infrastructure is a status quo, right? There's a CFO who says, hey, you were getting by before, you can keep getting by with what you're doing and using spreadsheets. And I'm sure many of you ran into this yourselves. I guess the question becomes, how do you justify, whether it's Nlight or another vendor, see how I'm trying to keep it very open, how do you justify a project like this? How do you get it through the door? Because inevitably the data center is not necessarily, or the infrastructure team is not necessarily the main focus for a lot of organizations. So anybody have any thoughts on how it came about or what the driving factors were?
I would say that when you're able to pull up a report, and I'm going to steal Liam's phrase, a single source of truth. When you're able to pull up a report and you're able to print it out and it has all the awesome graphics right from the page, and you're able to say, this is where we're at, whatever it is on the page, and I kind of wish I had some slides to show you what I'm talking about. That's huge. You know, so kind of goes back to the old ESPN, numbers never lie. I don't know if anyone ever knew that. I'm a big sports guy. But so, I mean, that's the truth, though. Numbers never lie. You don't want a false positive, so you want to make sure that you're monitoring the correct underlying categories to get the number that you want, kind of like that, was that Doonesbury cartoon today? You don't want to screw that up because you don't want to go into a meeting with the wrong numbers, but when you have the right numbers, there's really nothing left to say. So I thought that was huge, that if you're questioning why, you know, what's the added value? Well, that's the added value. It takes a long time to get there, don't get me wrong. It takes a lot of work, but you can manipulate the software to do exactly what you want as a company. That's actually what we're doing right now. So,
Anybody else?
Let me just say, yeah, the thing that we found was, like, again, this silo mentality we had is that, you know, whether it was asset management, network, et cetera, it wasn't that the data didn't exist, it's just that it wasn't being shared to the right people and to the people that really need to use this stuff. And, you know, so we focused on two things. One was resiliency in our data center. The other was optimization of our resources, and knowing that, and then basically the third thing being a buy-in with the workforce on this stuff, because they wanted this data, they were able to share it. But the thing was, it was very difficult to get it through finance because they want some immediate return, and you got to put something onto it that says it's going to be a cost takeout, you're going to remove headcount, you're going to do something like this. And what I found with DSIM is what it does, it's an enabler for, I mean, it may not directly take your cost out, but it's going to give you the data that you need to make those decisions on where are you stranding power, where am I not using it optimally? Because, I mean, we used to work with building level measurements. Now you can go down to rack and device level and very rapidly be able to analyze that data so you can identify which account, which, you know, racks, which data center would need, you know, are the ones you need to optimize, plus compare them for best of breed analysis. Why is this one working better than that? So, I mean, it's done all those things, and we didn't focus so much on the cost takeout. I mean, we put together the financial stuff that says, yeah, you can defer data center bills, you can do this and that and the other, but if you hit the fundamentals, you know, that's the only way we were able to drive it is, you know, no outages, no, you know, and optimization. But optimization does equate to cost takeout. Either that or revenue growth, one or the other, and neither one is okay.
Sure. Did you want to jump in, Angie, or you?
Well, I was gonna tell kind of a funny story of how I got DSIM. So all of our executive leadership talks about, you know, a picture tells 1,000 words. All of our executives like the pretty one slide, right, with all the colors and sum up exactly what you're trying to get across, right? Mm-hmm. So it is very hard to justify the cost of the software, especially when you're talking more about cost avoidance than actual savings from day one. And you just have to be ingenious, right? You have to know what you want. So I took some 4x6 Kanban boards, and I took 2 of them and a bunch of sticky notes of all different colors and inventoried a data center manually and showed exactly how many open slots per rack there were. And then I took a vinyl overlay that I could flip over and show what DSIM would do for us with optimization. And I carried that around for 3 months. I was known as, here she comes, right? I mean, hold the elevator, Angie's coming with her boards. But it really did. It finally spoke to top leaders of our company, and they started asking me to bring those boards with them to conversations. So You can be very creative with it. You don't have to show the hard dollars day one, but create that picture. And it's amazing what it will do.
The 2x4 ROI, was that what that was referred to in Cerner? So, did you want to jump in now?
I was just going to say, to add on to what Angie was just talking about, we use it greatly for the kind of white space planning and strategic data center floor plan design as well. So we manage assets in racks all the way down to the power paths within the NAO tool. So we know the active power within a rack. So it helps us as a planning tool as well. And to John's point over here, some of that has caused negative impact because we've lost a few white space planning people to that result, but it also improves it because it's at the touch of your fingertips. As Angie would say, I mean, it's all right there. You can strip off the layers, you can move it down to a room, you can click on a rack, you can see absolutely where your assets are, what use spaces you have left. You can turn the rack around, find out how many power strips you have in the back, allocate how much power you have, tie it into your EPMS system on the NEO side, feed it the real-time power, and you've got a single pane of glass, and that's really the cat's meow that we were looking for. So.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. So, kind of just along that vein, I'll be really brief. I know one of the big reasons that we kind of moved into the DSIM world, aside from just trying to grow up, right? And you know, we had to look at it. We were a rapidly growing company. I mean, there were people just showing up every day, and I'm like, I have no idea who the hell these people are, but you know, they're working in the data center, and that's great. And more blocks. I mean, shipments just getting dropped off, right? We had no real, big boy dock to decom solution, right? We just weren't there, and it was, you know, when I went in to go talk to our CFO, and thankfully all those guys are really pretty cool, and they understand, you know, trying to be disruptive and move forward. It was great that once we kind of got things together and we said, okay, let's get the demos going, let's get some, we took one data center, and it was actually a really small one. It was like 20 racks. And we stuffed it all into Nlight. I went in and I said basically, okay, hey, look guys, so this is what, you know, this one data center looks like. It's pretty small, it's only like 20 racks. You know, but you know, here's what we're learning from it. And the immediate thing that they asked me, the finance guys asked me, went, so, hey, this shows off how we're working pretty well in the hyper-converged space. So you want to like turn that into a sales deck? I'm like, what? Nobody asks IT dudes to turn stuff into sales decks. Nobody does that. But he did, and you know, so I was like, okay, let me talk to somebody who's actually good at PowerPoint, and we'll put something together, and they were happy with it. But you know, partly that's also because we know that there's a lot of our customers, our Nutanix customers, are also Nlight customers, right? So a lot of the big ones, you know, and we care about every single customer, right? No matter how big or how small, and that's not a marketing line. That's not like horse crap. That's true. And you know, we know that the tools that like we're working on in-house, the stuff that I'm trying to build out, or I'm going to build a new material sheet for that, or this isn't accurate, or that's not accurate. You know, it's important for us to make sure that all that stuff works for our customers that are outside. And so, you know, when we talk about building an integration, we took that extremely seriously. And so once we started talking about that and getting that together, the money to buy new racks and buy new licenses and get all that other stuff worked out really cleanly for us.
Cool. So you guys have brought up integration a couple times. I want to sort of jump there. Obviously, you have this centralized set of data, normalized, and all this valuable information that was in spreadsheets before. What systems are you tying in today, or what do you want to tie into the future? I know there's some talk about Nutanix. They're up here on stage. So anybody want to talk about where you're integrating today and where you want to integrate tomorrow, whether it's BMS or ITSM or?
Well, so that's a lot of flexibility. We have BMC Atrium today. We also have the change management piece. Those were kind of the easy out-of-the-box solutions. And then we have what's called our data lake. So out in Azure, we're sending all of our discovery tools data that they're discovering on our network to a centralized location in the cloud, and there's some analytics that Cerner's built around it so that we can figure out which tool has the most accurate data and information. And so what we were able to do, you guys have been a great partner. They built a custom tool specific for our Azure platform to be able to import that golden record. And then we're creating a triangle into the Atrium CMDB so that we can feed our CMDB real live information and keep that information up to date so that people can trust our CMDB in the end. We've also have ALC software on the facility side. It's probably not my strongest point to speak about, but my sales team got me hooked up with another client of Enlight, and he was able to help us find the best, easiest way to connect our facilities ALC system into the Neo software that you spoke a lot of. Ideally, this is the thing. And very much back to Liam's point earlier, we are to the point as an organization where before we purchase a server or an asset, we know that we have space and power in the data center. We know where it's going to go. My joke is that we have taken Christmas away from the asset management team. We now know what's supposed to show up on the dock. It's not just a surprise when the pallet shows up. They know exactly where to go, provide that with the provisioning team. The provisioning team will know where to put it in the data center. I track it from a tech currency and a tech hardware perspective all the way through its life cycle. I know when it's deployed. I know when it's retired. I know when I retire a platform, how much of a data center will be freed up for that, right? And I can also use the Enlight software to do what-if scenarios. So when I make power adjustments on a platform like our VMware platform, we know how it'll impact our data centers. And it's critical because we're bringing these servers in that are taking up so much more power than ever. And we need to be able to now figure out, what is the next level for our data center design, right? Instead of just a rack of network and a rack of or a row of servers and a row of storage, we're having to kind of divide it up. And we have the ability to do that. So, and that's how we're getting away from building more data centers, right? We know the right place to put the right assets when they come in, so.
Yeah, that's one thing that's been pretty huge for us too, is figuring out where we actually have power capacity available, and that's been one of our biggest tripping points. And for those of you that don't have Enlight, there's one of the modules they have is this module called Neo, which is their Enlight Energy Optimizer, I think, and it basically shows you how much power you're pulling in a specific rack, and it's all pretty broken up and laid out. It's really kind of cool. It's all real time. But one of the problems that we ran into really quickly was that if you fill up like a 52U Legrand rack with Nutanix blocks and you start cranking this thing full tilt, you're going to hit 40K dub, and that's insane. So, there's not a lot of places, not a lot of facilities that you can go out there and say, yeah, give me 40, 50K dub, it's no big deal. You got to custom build that stuff and get that thing tight, right? When you're saying, oh yeah, well I can run, 6,000, 7,000 consecutive workloads in a rack. People kind of blink a little bit. But, for us, it was like, are we on the edge of are we at like 36? Are we at like 38? How many more of that is there? But you can play with it and do those scenarios. Right, I'm like, okay, well, if I need to build a cluster of X size and I got to put this many blocks in there and I got to do my architect thing that they pay me for, then I want to have all the numbers and make it easier, right? I don't want to do math in a spreadsheet to go figure it out because that's dumb. And I'm like, no, I'll just use a tool that's better at it than I am.
Okay, so I had promised we'd leave some time at the end, so I do want to ask one more question, and then we'll go to the questions from the audience. So get your questions ready, folks. I guess my question to you guys is, what is your advice to folks if they want to take the journey of deploying software to help manage the critical infrastructure, what your thoughts are? So that'll be the last question before we turn it to the audience for questions.
Go to Gartner Magic Quadrant. Do your own research first. It's really simple. I mean, you can't get any easier. There's only about 4 maybe real players in this space.
One thing I would say, along with doing your research on your vendors, but also engage with your internal teams, network infrastructure, the hardware people, the managers at the data centers you're going to provide, all need to be on board to make this successful. We empower the data center managers and teams at each site. They're accountable for their own information. So once we have it uploaded and we've loaded it and it's deployed, it's theirs to manage. It's not my problem as an Nlight tool owner to make their data look good. It's their problem. My choice and my work is to provide them the tools from Nlight to make that happen. So one of the struggles we've had is being able to make some of the connections for the real-time power on the back end. The EPMS systems, the BMS systems can be a bear to try to connect with. Many of those are set on a private network versus your own company network. You might have firewalls to jump through, ports that can cripple that. If you don't have the right people in place to make those connections and understand the topology or the design, it could be a struggle when you start. But once you have that as a well-oiled machine running and your contacts down to who to interface with, helps out a ton.
Okay. Okay, John, last one.
Yeah, I'll keep it short on this one because basically two things. One, plan your architecture so that you have a sense of all the different components that come with DSIM and how they're all going to fit together and where you'll get the source data and what group will do it. But don't feel like you have to go do it all at once because it can be overwhelming. There's just so much. DSIM continues to grow in the breadth of it. I remember going to one of our reviews on promotion and someone says, oh, this guy only knows DSIM. And, they need to have at least 2 skills. Yeah, so, those who know DSIM laugh at that because, it's got like, a dozen different ones. It's extremely broad in the network hardware. You just go on and on. And it can, if you think of it in terms of, I got to get it all done at once, it's going to paralyze you. You have to, but that's why I say you have the plan that takes it all into account, but hit it where, your business need may be, like some I see, start on the facility side and kind of bring it forward towards the IT, link, and others just the reverse on that. So it's really what your initial business need is for the most part, but bringing it all together is what's really going to drive the ultimate optimization and cost takeouts and things because of shared data, shared resources, and everyone kind of contributing to, the best cumulative idea.
All right, quickly, because I want to get some questions, and they're going to cut us off. So.
Okay. Just quick, APIs. It doesn't matter if it's DSIM or it's any other tool. Whatever you're going to go out and buy to support your organizations, make sure they have a really good, rich set of APIs. If you don't, you're kind of locking yourself into something that might not scale for you if you get explosive growth. Just
okay.
APIs.
Great. So we got a question right up front.
Can any of y'all speak to integration, whether it be using the B connector module of Nlight and or integration with ServiceNow? Challenges and success.
So the question is, just so I can have it on the videotape, is integration with ServiceNow. Can any of you talk to having integrated with ServiceNow?
I'll start. We are currently integrated with ServiceNow. Initially, we had an effort that went in because we did have an integration prior to ServiceNow to HP, and we moved vendors there, and it was a homegrown application that was written, APIs that were put in. Since that, we are moving away from any internal development as an organizational strategy, and we are now engaged in actively pursuing the change management connector and the ITSM connector from Nlight. So it is far better than what we have today, and we don't want to invest in the development time and resources. So there is something out there that does work successfully, and we are in the process of trying to implement it. I can't comment on it being fully implemented, but there is one, and we're making the choice to move away from self-development APIs to the vendor-supported solution. Okay.
I think we have a question over in the corner.
Yes. Anyone implemented with RFID with the hardware assets?
Yeah,
What was the question? I didn't quite catch it.
Are you using RFID within the assets to track?
It's an interesting question. We started with RFID, in fact, have it pretty pervasively rolled out. In the United States, IBM, we had done all the assets were tagged, and we in fact even went with the harnesses to narrow it down to which rack they're on. The interesting thing is that I've found that it helps if you do the initial RFID true up, which you have to do. It's not magic. But at the same time, we're reevaluating whether we really need that going forward, and certainly whether I would invest in it further with some of the newer products that are coming on the market with Nlight, like the Discovery tool, for example, because that you can have the automation do it instead of having to always be dependent on the process and the personnel, because we have so much volatility in IBM these days with personnel in particular that you got it all ready to go, and then that team's gone the next day. But with the automation, that's really our strategy right now is to roll out the Discovery/Explorer tool to take the place of that. Plus, I will say that I did a cost analysis on the two, and they were dramatically more costly with RFID.
Okay, great. One more question. Anybody out there have one more question before we bring it to an end? Going once. So, sold to the man in third row.
Has anybody used the predictive failure analysis, I guess, for event management of the, whatever racks services you have, and whether the Nlight tool can show that, this device is starting to fail?
Are you talking about power failure simulation or?
The predictive one?
Predictive analysis. Yeah.
Predictive. Can we?
Should I yell or?
No, can you pass the microphone down?
Oh, okay.
You want to comment?
I'll comment very quickly on it, but yeah, we're looking very strongly at Neo because that when I talk about resiliency being our number one thing in IBM, we've actually had developed some other reports and things that we use internally to use the data that Nlight, from the connectivity data and make sure we have the resiliency. But we clearly identified the reporting capability that the field acquisition and Neo brings to the table, and that's one we're looking to deploy in first quarter next year.
Okay. Oh, we're going to. Okay, one more thing.
One last thing, and you can find me at a blackjack table if you really want to know my story. So, real quick, I would say that one of the best things that you guys are going to want to know, deployment, customer service, they were awesome. So there is a story.
Awesome, right? Are
awesome. Sorry.
Just checking.
So there's a real quick story of a company that I had actually said, hey, give me three clients. I'm going to call them. They gave me 3 clients. I called them. One of the guys told me that he had another, that I will not say who it was, company. They spent $1 million on deploying DCIM. The support for this particular company completely failed them. So they had to start over from scratch a year and a half later. So if you're looking for, of course, this is all great, pie in the sky, but really when it comes down to it, you can't deploy any of this stuff that we all know. It takes a long time, it takes a lot of coordination. Their support team is phenomenal.
Okay.
I'm a year into my deployment, and I second.
Great. I want to thank the panel. Could everybody just give a round of applause for the panel? Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.